today I'm doing a message about the habit of recharging. So that's the theme I'm meant to be covering. But I want to be transparent with you guys. I told my intern that this is what I was talking about on Sunday, and she laughed. And she goes, "You're really good at that, aren't you?" And I think I fired back with, "Do what I say, not what I do." And, So I struggled trying to write this message because I'm not one who's good at recharging. I'm not one at taking time for myself. I feel guilty for it. I feel like there's something I should do. You have time off and you fill it with things, so you're busy, busy, busy. Sitting around just seems like a waste. Doing things just for me seems like a waste. It's hard for me to get into that mind. It's hard for me to, take holidays, which I'm sure you can ask any elder here. It's probably what I get fussed at more than anything, is I'm not good at taking holidays. I'm not good at taking time off. So it's really weird to share this message with you. So when I sat down, I'm really authentic with the way that I share. I never want to get up here and act like I have it together, or share a message like I'm doing it. And it's been really hard to do this message. It's been a struggle. There's been a couple of drafts, but I feel like God gave me a different direction. And I decided to kind of take a different approach. Because I think we all know the habits that we need to do to recharge. I'm sure we all know those habits for us. And I don't know what it is for you. Maybe it's going for a walk in the woods. Maybe it's going for a run. Maybe it's sitting down and having that nice cup of tea and seeing the sunset. Who knows what it is, but I'm sure we all know the habits that when we do them, you just feel lighter. You just feel like a weight's off. And I'm sure we all know about those habits. So I don't want to look at those habits. I really want to, dive into what I believe one of our struggles is to have the habit of recharging. I think it's why, as a culture, we don't do it enough. And I think the reason we struggle is because of this word called goals. I think we have so many goals all the time. And I think goals kind of drive our nonstop nature. And what I mean by that is we set goals, and it seems like goals outweigh our well-being sometimes. If we have a goal to get the job done, let's say, we'll make it small. Let's say it's mowing the yard one weekend, right? If we're honest, the world's not going to end if you don't mow and whippersnip one weekend. So let's say you've had a flat-out week, but you have to make sure you mow that yard on Saturday. And then you'll go out there and you do that mowing, even though you might want to do something else before you do the mowing. Put your feet up a little bit. Look after yourself. But we always feel like the goal trumps our well-being. And I think it drives this nature in us where we just keep going and we keep putting away recharging. And we find excuses not to. And I'm not perfect at this. I'd love to say I'm really good. I'm really bad. I can have days off, and if you call me, I will gladly answer the phone. Or if you email me, I'll gladly probably email you back. Because I'll be like, I'll just do it real quick. Because, my goal is to see God do something awesome with this church. So that trumps any well-being of Matt. Which isn't good all the time. Sometimes we do have to put our nose down and work, but I think we do it too much. And I think to develop a habit of recharging, we kind of have to shift our mindset. So we got to shift from a goal mindset to a formation mindset. And this is something I've been trying to do lately. And I got a lot of this from a book called The Hell with the Hustle. So it was a book written by a guy named Jeffrey, I get his last name wrong all the time, Banksy or something. But he's really poetic. He's made these videos in the past of, why he loves Jesus and hates religion. He's a well-known speaker in America. He's gone around and he's done some amazing stuff. And he wrote a book about trying to slow down your life that I read a little bit ago. And he had this kind of idea that him and his family did, where they shifted from a goal mindset to a formation mindset. And I think there's lots of fruit in that. Because goals are about doing and results, if we're honest. When we have a goal, it's all about doing and getting the result, right? Ticking the box. And I think formation, it's still about getting the job done, but there's a couple words added in. It's kind of about being. It's about us developing. It's about us trying to be the best versions of ourselves, and it's about the process. We don't try to rush things. We still might have that goal in mind, but we're all right if that goal changes and adapts. We're going to take it a bit slower. We're going to look after ourselves. And I think this is something that can be really fruitful for us, especially if you're like me and you really struggle to have a habit of recharging, to have that Sabbath or have that time to put your feet up, to fill your cup. I think if we shift from a formation mindset, it can help us. And I really believe Jesus had a formation mindset. And I think we see this throughout his life, death, and resurrection. You know, how many times do we read of Jesus going missing? Going on walkabout in a sense, right? The disciples wake up and Jesus is nowhere to be found. He's out in the wilderness. He's having his time. They come and find him, and then what does he do? He usually does it unexpected. He's like, all right, time to go. So that seemed to help him with his ministry all along throughout the Gospels. And I think we see the culmination when Jesus shows off his cooking skills in John chapter 21, verses 1 to 14. So I want to look at this story with you guys this morning. And before I do, just to give some context, this part is towards the end of John's Gospel. Jesus has already appeared twice to the disciples. So this is the third time that he's appearing to them. And it's right before John finishes his gospel. And I think it's important to realize that where this is placed. But let's dive into the story together. And this is what we read. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. He showed himself in this way. Gathered there together were Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two others of his disciples. Simon Peter said to them, I am going fishing. They said to him, we will go with you. They went out, got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Now I want to pause here because I love what the disciples are kind of doing here. Now Jesus has appeared twice to them. Their minds are probably rattled. They're probably like, I need to center myself a bit. And I love what Peter does. What is Peter? He's a fisherman. So he's like, you know what? I'm going fishing. That'll be good. I'll sit in a boat. I'll relax. I'll try to think about things. And then everyone else is like, oh, we'll go with you. And they go off and they go fishing. And then I feel like they have a fishing experience like me because I never catch anything. Right? You just sit there. You just keep waiting. And then you think something nibbles and you reel it in. You get all excited. And half the time, I don't know how, I catch all the plants at the bottom of I don't know what it is. I feel like the fish kick them up to prank me. That's my belief at least, but never catch anything. So they catch nothing. And our story goes on. Just after daybreak, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, children, you have no fish, have you? They answered him, no. I kind of love the sarcasm of Jesus sometimes. I feel like he's got a good sense of humor, right? They've been fishing all night. He knows they don't have anything. And children, you have any fish? Like, oh my goodness, that's such a little dig. I love it. But it goes on. He said to them, cast the net to the right side of the boat, and you will find some. So they cast it. And now they were not able to haul it in because there were so many fish. And I love this moment here. I love it for a number of reasons, but one reason I really love it, if we go back, how did Peter originally decide to follow Jesus? It was a similar story, wasn't it? Fishing all night, catching nothing, coming in tired, and, Jesus talking them into doing the same thing, and what happened? They caught a heap of fish. So I love how it's taken us back to that moment. Let's keep reading. The disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the sea, but the other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from the land, only about 100 yards off. When they had gone ashore, they saw a charcoal fire there with fish on it and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you have just caught." Now, I kind of love this part too, because I think there's two things that jump out to me. The first is how John always talks about himself, the disciple whom Jesus loved. And I don't think that's an egotistical thing. I used to read it and think it is, but I think if we dive into it, I think he just had this really intimate relationship with Jesus. Or it's not that he's bragging about it. It's his heart burning. Like, when you're first in love with the first girlfriend. Has anyone had that experience yet, where you're just head over heels, right? They can't do anything wrong. Your heart's just burning. You're like, oh, that's the love of my life. And your parents are like, just calm down. 2 months, you're going to, no, we're never breaking up, Dad. And then usually, at least my parents were always right, half the time. But yeah, we all know that feeling. And I think John has that feeling. I also like how Peter just reminds me of someone who thinks but doesn't think. So he puts on his outer garment, which I'm kind of like, all right, dress yourself up. That makes sense. You might have been standing there, sweating a bit. So let's put it back on, look nice for Jesus. But no, what does he do after he puts it on? He jumps in. In my mind, I'm like, why would you put it on? Just jump in without it. Wait till it gets back to the shore. But I kind of love that. I love that about this part of the story. And then I love how they get there. And Jesus already has a charcoal fire set up with fish on it. He doesn't even really need the fish that they got. Let's go on. So Simon Peter went abroad and hauled the net ashore, full of large fish, 153 of them. And though there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." Now, none of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" because they knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time that Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. I love this part. I love that Jesus is having a meal with his friends. How much relationship do we build when we share food with one another? I mean, it can be such a positive, and sometimes it can be a negative experience. For me, for Thanksgiving, if anyone brought up politics, that immediately made it a negative experience, sharing a meal, because everyone's got an idea around politics. But sometimes they're the most blessed times, sharing a meal with friends and loved ones. And I love that Jesus is doing this on the third time that he appears, the last time that he appears. And I find this story fascinating. I find it more fascinating when we realize John's gospel only implies the ascension. And the last miraculous thing Jesus does is cook his friends a meal on the beach. So you can read on in John, and you'll read, he pulls Simon away, he talks to Simon for a little bit, lead my sheep. And then Simon's kind of like, gets told that he's going to probably die in not the nicest way. And I think any of us would respond. Simon sees the disciple Jesus loved, and he's like, hey, what about this guy? He's with you too. Come on, is something happening to him? And then Jesus says how, it's none of your business kind of thing. And then the story ends. Talks about how they couldn't fill the book with all the things that Jesus did. And I think the way John ends his book to me is really surprising. Because the last miraculous thing we have from Jesus doing is cooking a meal with his friends. And I think it's interesting that every time in John's gospel that he appears, he's supporting them. Because the first time, if you go back in John's gospel, they're kind of cowering away. They're all scared. Jesus has died. They think they're next. People are coming to get them. So they're hiding in a room with the door locked. And what happens? Jesus just appears. Tells them to have peace. Helps them find bravery and courage. And it's funny, none of these appearances do we hear about what they talk about. You might read that they talk, but we don't hear too much besides Simon and Jesus having that chat. There's not a lot that we hear. You know, what kind of teaching he said to them. We just hear about the moment, him showing up when they needed it, giving them some bravery. And then the second time that he appears, I'm sure we all know that story. It's Doubting Thomas, we like to call him, which he gets a bad rep. I think I would have doubted too. Like if I wasn't around and all my friends were like, hey, you remember that guy who just died, who we followed? He came back from the dead. I would have been like, yeah, I don't believe you guys. Not until I see it. So what does Jesus do? He appears again. And Thomas, gets to see the wounds. And I think this last time is even interesting because it seems like Jesus is appearing to them right before he sends them out, right before he gives Simon Peter this amazing task. And he's helping them recharge. He knows they're struggling, and they just got done fishing. And they caught nothing. And I can imagine they're a bit hungry, and what does Jesus have prepared for them? A meal. So I think it's pretty clear for me when we see how Jesus operated. He did have a goal. And we can see that clearly in the gospel. And I'm not saying there's not a goal, but he really cared about the process. I think Jesus had a formation mindset. Because if we're honest, if it was about just reaching the goal, he wouldn't have picked 12, rat packs, if we're honest. They were not good enough. They didn't know the Torah enough. They were just like fishermen. Heck, he picked Peter to build his church on. Like, seriously? Like, mate, come on. That guy just denied you 3 times. Like, shouldn't you be like punching him in the stomach? But no. Jesus operates different. He seems like he has these goals, but he's captivated by the process. By helping his disciples, each one of them, become the best versions of themselves. And I think when we do that, it allows us, if we have that mindset, to take time to recharge. Because even Jesus knew he needed to recharge. How many times do you read about him in the Gospels of going away and having time alone? And I guess I read that and I wonder how often we do that. In our society, that just seems to be non-stop. And I think habits of recharging, if we want to grow them, require a formation mindset. Where it doesn't mean we don't have goals, but we're okay with the process a bit. We're all right to take things slow. Throughout whatever goal we're trying to reach or aspire to, we want to become the best version of ourselves. Because goals can be good, but we don't want to leave a path of destruction trying to reach our goal. Now, I could spend all my time at the church and do amazing things, and God can move, and I could neglect my family and not be there for him. And that would be a tragedy, wouldn't it? And the goal still might be good, but if I switch to a formation mindset, it's going to allow me to take time. It's going to allow me to go slower. It's going to allow me not to miss some important moments because I'm going to take time to recharge so I'm the best version of myself, where I'm not burning the candle at both ends. But we have to switch to this mindset. Which I think enables us to focus on who we're becoming through the practices that we're doing. So we can ensure we're becoming the best versions of ourselves, while not removing the goal or the desired outcome that we have. I think what we remove is the always stretching deadlines of goals, right? Because the minute you do one goal, it seems like we make up another one. And I think when we remove that, it enables us to develop habits of recharging. And I hope we can all, as a church, try to take this different kind of mindset. Try to have a formation mindset. Because I think if we do that, it will really help us. It will benefit us. We'll still reach some of these amazing goals we might plan, but we won't leave a wake of destruction. We'll bring people on a journey with us, just like Jesus did.